This is absolutely crazy. Almost 7 years after its release, we are still discovering new hidden mysteries in Black Ops 4 Zombies, for the Chaos storyline and the Aether storyline. And I find this precedent especially interesting because recently we've really been deep diving into the old lore for Black Ops 3 Zombies, but largely Black Ops 4 has been untouched, and because so much of the focus has just been on the impossible Easter egg in Black Ops 3 and other Easter eggs in that game, Black Ops 4 has been largely ignored until now. Recently, there has been a wave of interest in the Chaos storyline once again, partly from people's dissatisfaction with the current storytelling in Black Ops 6 with them weaving back in the Chaos storyline, and due to people feeling unsatisfied that it ended on an epic cliffhanger, with little indication about where it was going to go next. However, from these new Easter eggs discovered, it seems to point to the map where it was all going to head, and if true, it is absolutely mind-shattering that we never got to get one of the most asked maps ever in COD Zombies history. And these recent discoveries only stand to prove once again that the Jason Blundell/Craig Houston duo truly cared about the deeper mysteries within Zombies. As part of this, we even have a document that's been missing in the Aether storyline until now, so let's explore it. So what are these new discoveries? Well, cipher-solving legend Rich Killer made a post on the COD Zombies subreddit the other day. After almost 2 years of radio silence, before he went dark, Rich Killer says he was actually working on the information that is detailed within the post, but due to real-life circumstances we aren't privy to, was unable to collate it all together until now. Well, it was certainly worth the wait. He explains that in Black Ops 4, the texture files in-game have their file names hashed, so that data miners are unable to see the actual file name. Now, whilst some other people have discussed this and talked about it, and even in the comments, I don't think people have realised the true significance of these finds. Many of them are writing them off as just being small things, but they are not. This is going to be a major deep dive today, as a lot of this has been glossed over. We actually have discussed this briefly in my video debunking the Great War player textures in Black Ops 4, so check that out if you haven't already. Essentially, Rich Killer, along with Coldstone the Gamer and Jake Russ 47, have been attempting to decipher the names of these texture files back into plain English. Alongside just being a fun puzzle-solving exercise, there was an important reason for doing this. Black Ops 4 has some incredibly obscure ciphers. One very famous example of this was the Voyage of Despair carpet cipher, where a cipher was visually hidden within a carpet texture in the map. Some of these could be discovered by the fact that they would disappear when loading the map on easy mode, or custom mutations, but with them being so hidden, it was very hard to discover them all this way. As a result of Rich Killer and Co.'s work, however, they now have access to the texture file names, and in the cases of the ciphers, these are labelled clearly with cipher in the file name. Finally getting concrete confirmation. So now we know that this is a cipher, people can finally start cracking at it without really knowing if it was before. Whilst it looks very similar to a barcode, it doesn't seem to actually be that. An additional confirmation with this is that the order of the Blood of the Dead ciphers is now known. These ciphers were very clearly meant to go in a specific order, but there was no in-game indication of this. Now, with the file names decoded, they indicate the order, i.e. cipher 1, 2, etc. Which, whilst tells us nothing groundbreaking, it helps paint a more coherent story. But with the close eye on the textures of the game, the ordering of ciphers isn't the only thing that has been discovered. So let's dive in. Unclassified, there were many documents that were, unsurprisingly, classified. One of these papers had all of the content obscured, but was painstakingly recreated by Rich Killer and Co. It reads, Subject, WH Broken Arrow Initiative. Files, Element 115, Research. Upon several months, our laboratory has made a breakthrough. Group 935's research has set the foundation for our recent success. We have managed to achieve discovery before the USSR. Our scientists continue to find the true potential of Element 115 5's purpose. We propose that experimentations continue as usual to identify traits the elements hold. We propose that experimentations continue as usual to identify traits the elements hold. As instructed, we have been recording our findings in audio reels provided, some which will hold further information. And obviously we see these on the map themselves with the different reels you can play. We will continue to conduct research and continue to document unusual findings. Now, whilst this is a new discovery, this document, however, doesn't really hold anything groundbreaking. Unfortunately, in this case, I think this was some random jargon written by one of the writing team in order to just fill out the space so they could then draw the redacted lines and have it look realistic. It does give us some nice in-universe consistency, the fact that there's a document explaining why so many of the reels exist in Classified itself, but other than that, it's not really that big of a deal. Nevertheless, however, what was discovered in the Chaos story is far, far more important. All over the Chaos storyline, there are ciphers that use alchemical symbols to hide meaning. These were done using a modified version of the real-life periodic table that was eventually given out to the community. In spite of this, however, a lot of these ciphers in the games remained untranslated, or in fact wrong. One such example of this was the cipher in the Odin Tower in 9. Each of the Towers of the Gods has a 4-line poem, written in the alchemical language. Danu, Zeus, and Ra all ended in the line, "In chaos it shall be done." However, Odin did not fit this pattern, with the final line just being a repeat of the first line, which suggested to some that the texture was actually bugged in-game. Well, Richkiller has confirmed this to be the case, and this shows that Treyarch are of course not immune to mistakes, like we've seen in many cases recently. Maybe there's even been mistakes in the impossible Easter egg, making it even harder to crack. Nevertheless, finally, he has shown the full Odin cipher, and this is what it reads. Through the modern seas and mountains cold, the wandering father guides men in battle, in verse, in life, in death. His wisdom is often disguised. Our deed shall echo in glorious songs, lessons of blood saved and split. For we are the wandering father, our quest is eternal. In chaos it shall be undone. This last line being the new one found. This now completes the set of 4 ciphers. Zeus, on the meridian shores of sand and stone, the king of the gods holds court. With lightning, his will, and thunder, his voice, he directs all creation to follow. Our world shall ring loud and clear, sky, sea, and storms. Our golden voice in every ear, for we are the kings of the gods. Our reign is nigh, in chaos it shall be done. Danu, in the ancient forests of Ireland green, the mother of life bears fruit. Her children, the trees and people alike, she whispers her love as they grow. Barren lands shall grow at our touch. That which is green shall spread, for we are the mothers of life. Our roots run deep. In chaos it shall be undone. Fourth and finally, Ra. Above the scorching deserts, beyond the sea, the Lord of the Sun sees all. His eye has stood watch over Farmer and Pharaoh rising and setting the same. All-seeing sight shall be ours as well, in shadow no evil shall hide. For we are the Lord of the Sun. Our light reveals truth. In chaos it shall be undone. Interesting now when we know it seems like Cortifex was posing to the people of ancient Egypt to be Ra himself as of Black Ops 6. Anyways, with these 4 ciphers together, we can finally shine a light on some of what the Order intended to do, and even get a bit of insight into what is going on with the gods in the Dark Aether storyline today. The first 2 lines of each poem discuss the mythological god themselves, what they meant to that culture. The third line, though, that tells us what the Order actually planned to do. Like Ra, they wanted all-seeing sight so that they could find and destroy all evil. Like Danu, they wanted to heal the nature of the earth, which at the point was being poisoned by the Industrial Revolution. Like Zeus, they would let their voice be heard through clear days and storms all across the world. And like Odin, their deeds would be sung about for generations. Both the lives they saved and the lives they had taken. Essentially, the Order viewed themselves as the true good of the world, genuinely trying to save humanity. But they needed to have total control in order to do so. Then, in the last lines, like Ra, they will be the Lord of the Sun, illuminating every truth. Like Danu, they will become the source of all life on Earth. Like Zeus, they will be the kings of all. And now we know, like Odin, they will forever wander the world on an eternal quest for knowledge. This new final line confirms so much about what we had speculated about them. Much like the Rosicrucians, they believed the gaining of knowledge for the betterment of humankind to be a holy task, in order to prevent wars and save humanity. But they would inevitably fall out with the Rosicrucians about what exactly must be done in order to do this. So now, let's talk about the Rosicrucians. As I've gone into in my videos on the Order and more recently on Josiah Shem, the Order in the Chaos storyline had two distinct periods, the Ancient Order and the Modern Order. In ancient times, we have pretty good reason to believe that the Order were the most powerful sect of individuals in the entire world, thanks to their harnessing of prima materia. In the map 9, we can literally see a mosaic of an ancient pharaoh of Egypt using prima materia to build the pyramids themselves, and this pharaoh actually has the mask of the Order embedded into his crown. Perhaps he was the High Priest of Chaos at the time. Regardless, they were clearly still at their height at the time of the Roman occupation of Egypt, when 9 was set, as we see thousands of members of the Order, all in their robes and masks, attending a sentinel trial in the intro cutscene for the map. And I guess even as we play, they literally throw poop at you. Indeed, they had such a mastery of the Sentinel artifacts that they could make something as dangerous as a Sentinel trial a controlled spectator sport. When every other time we see them initiated, they are deadly to anyone and everyone around. At some point though, possibly with the switch of the Roman Senate to Christianity over paganism, the Order was cast down. It might be that people within the Empire didn't like just how powerful the Order were, and so used the new religion of Christianity as a convenient excuse to get rid of them. We just don't know. What is important is that, beginning in the 1600s, a new esoteric order formed that, while having a basis in Christianity, explored philosophical and mystical ideas that were considered heretical at the time, all for the basis of guiding humanity into a supposed golden age, the Rosicrucian Order. It's very likely that, through some piece of narrative that we never ended up getting in the Chaos storyline, or maybe still lies dormant yet to be found, the early Rosicrucians ended up inheriting some of the lost knowledge of the Order, with the Order also having strong connections to Freemasonry. It's even possible that this could tie back into the Owl, a Templar Knight from Citadel Day Moor, as it's often believed that the Freemasons were spawned from the Knights Templar. It's very interesting how this new knowledge can help fill in gaps for even the current Dark Aether story, now that it seems to be one and the same as said Chaos story. Regardless, the Rosicrucians and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, an organization that spawned from them in turn, are both very relevant to the Chaos storyline, as through a rarely discussed letter in Voyage of Despair that we covered in my video on Josiah Shem, a member of the Order, seemingly the modern High Priest of Chaos, depending on whether or not they were immortal and are one and the same as the original, led a faction of renegades to split from the Rosicrucians, refounding the Order of Chaos in the modern day. In the Reddit thread, Richkiller offers a transcription of this letter, which was found nowhere else online, alongside several other letters also in Voyage of Despair that have never been spoken about before. These are crazy. Let's jump in. FRC Grandmaster Emergency Assembly, the 15th of March in the year of the Lord 1910. Meeting officially commences at 9:03 PM. Grandmaster RSC presides. Gentlemen, I apologize for both the lateness of the hour and the urgency with which this assembly was called. The issue, as it stands, could not wait. I received a letter earlier today from what I can only assume are dissident members of the Rosicrucian Order, our brothers in London. The only course of action was to bring you all here so I may read it out loud, rather than let its contents turn into kindling for the rumour mill. It says, to the FRC, there comes a time in any organization's history when we must question not just our mission, but our methods for achieving it. Over the centuries, the Rosicrucian Order has strived to inspire humanity towards enlightenment. We provided tools for education, wisdom, and personal growth. But what have we to show for our progress? Humanity has chosen to wage wars, accumulate riches, and embrace complacency. The stench of stagnation clings to mankind as tightly as they cling to their falsehoods and false idols, and we stood by and let it happen. No more. The time has come to force humanity's enlightenment. Drastic actions must be taken to save our species. We attempted to open the eyes of our elders here in London, but they choose to remain naive, chastising us before casting us out. We reach out to you now, knowing our American brothers will not choose ignorance. Join us in our cause for the betterment of mankind. The letter is then signed by the dissident members, including several hundred names, which I shall not waste the assembly's time with. LML. What in the devil is happening in England? RSC. A good question. The Rosicrucians Order High Council have also sent me a telegram regarding this affair. Their instruction is to reject any invitation from, and I quote, this small sect of pathetic individuals. TK. Several hundred names does not sound small. RSC. Whatever it may sound like, they and their actions do not speak for the Rosicrucian Order. The MAORC has already publicly condemned their agenda and will follow suit. Any works published by these dissidents is to be dismissed without discussion. From what England's told us, this new order's proposal to force humanity's enlightenment is beyond comprehension. If anyone present this evening wishes to align themselves with this type of malfeasance, now is your chance to submit your resignation. No? I thought as much. Now let's move on and forget this unpleasantness. I'm sure history will do so as well. Again, I actually went over this one in my Josiah Shem video, but essentially members of the American Rosicrucian branch are extremely concerned about what the High Priest of Chaos, now having split, is intending to do. Now a lot of people are acting like these letters now confirm that there were different sects of the order, but this was already confirmed. I think it just wasn't as obvious as it's made out in the Reddit thread. But anyways, it seems that the High Priest is under the belief that the Rosicrucians have grown to complacency and, with World War I looming, believes he has to take drastic actions in order to save humanity, even if completing the Sentinel trials will cost far more lives than war ever theoretically could. Another letter reads, March 28th, 1910, to my beloved Moyna. I write to you now to explain my sudden and extended absence these last days. Hopefully you have not turned to panic. I assure you I am in good health. Cool off the hounds, my dear. I live and breathe, yeah? My unexpected departure was forced by events that recently transpired. I had no choice but to sequester myself at Athor and meditate on the incident. It is 1:30 as I write to you now, the first hour of a new day, literally and perhaps metaphorically. I am enveloped by darkness, lit only by candle, and yet the dark cannot hide the trembling of my hand, nor the racing of my heart. I cannot recall the last time I slept. A fortnight ago, I was approached by a man who claimed to represent a new order, made up of disciples who had been cast out of the Rosicrucians in London. He talked of a new mission for the enlightenment of all men and women. What he spoke of terrified me. I've spent these last days thinking on what he told me, meditating on his proposal for humanity's salvation. He spoke of an unspeakable act, an event the order would use to mold mankind in their image. I dare not speak of it. I do not wish to corrupt your mind. I fear you may gravitate towards it as easily as I found myself. What he spoke of was not inherently inconceivable or vile. It was an idea that, in the grand scheme of the universe, certainly had its benefits. That may be what frightened me most. The longer he spoke, the more I gravitated to his proposal. As he explained his vision, a corruption grew within my mind. Suddenly, where I once saw peace and prosperity in this world, I saw the evils and horror he wished to expunge. I was incepted by his perspective and caught in a trance. I too sought to expel these evils from the world. I told him I would consider it. Moyna! Damn it all! I told him I would consider the malicious endeavour. Even as I write to you now, I find myself drawn back toward the idea, but I must cast it out, cast it down. But then he departed, and I regained control over my mind. I once more saw the world for what it was, a plane existing in the middle of all things, the shades of grey, our melting pot of benevolence and malevolence, progression and regression. I was aghast at what I had nearly agreed to, and ashamed I allowed my mind to drift to such thoughts. I have not yet decided if I am to share this revelation with Alpha et Omega. I shall return home shortly. Yours always, Samuel. So in these letters we have the initials of many different people, but who actually are they? Well, Rich Killer points out that they are based on the real-life Rosicrucian Order and its members. So AC is Alistair Crowley, Moyna is Moyna Mathers. He also provides a link to a YouTube video on the Rosicrucian Order AMORC, which I will also leave a link to in the description for further research, and he provides some links to Alpha et Omega and the Golden Dawn. But who exactly is this Samuel? Given he addresses his wife, who has a peculiar name, and mentions an organization called Alpha et Omega, we can actually pretty easily deduce that this is the real-life historical figure Samuel Liddell MacGregor Mathers. He was a Rosicrucian and founding member of the offshoot Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Alpha et Omega is just another name of this order. From this, we get yet more insight into the High Priest and his mission, and it further confirms our suspicions. The High Priest, though planning on taking extreme measures, seems to genuinely believe that what he intends is in humanity's best interests, and he seems to be an incredibly convincing, charismatic speaker as well. Finally, and in my view most importantly, we have the third letter. In the thread, Rich Killer seems to not identify who this person is in real life, but with a bit of research, I've discovered that this is Max Heindel, a Christian mystic who died in 1919. In real life, Heindel claims that while on a trip to Germany to hear a series of lectures by another mystic, he was visited by a spirit of a being known only as an elder brother of the Rosicrucian Order. Elder brother was benevolent, and among other things, told him that the Rosicrucian Order he belonged to was nothing to do with the real-world organization, and that, in actual fact, the true Rosicrucians existed outside of this plane. He said that the true temple of the Rosicrucians was on the German/Bohemian border, but was etheric, i.e. not in this world. But there, he could retrieve teaching from all 12 elder brothers of the Rosicrucian Order, and their 13th member, the leader. Max Heindel wrote a book detailing some of this in 1909, called The Rosicrucian Cosmo-Conception, and discusses the death and rebirth of human spirits and human evolution. With that out of the way, here is the letter. March 14th, 1910. The elder brother visited me again this evening. Though his attire was the same as before, he once more appeared clothed in his vital body. His face told a different story than past encounters. He was unnerved, perturbed by an event that had occurred on our plane. The elder brother has visited me many times from the inner world. For years he came bearing knowledge, his generous gift to me. I had come to think of him as my teacher. He has guided my pen as much as my mind. Without him, I would never have written the Cosmo-Conception. Without him, I would never have found the Temple of the Rose Cross. Without him, I can safely say, I would not be the man I am today. Tonight, I had no knowledge to offer, only a warning. The world was changing, he feared, and not in the way it had been foretold. There were forces at work within the Rosicrucian Order itself that threatened to dismantle the paradigms of our world. I challenged him. Maybe the world required such a dramatic shift. Perhaps that would help open our eye. He looked grimly upon me. Forcing evolution has never yielded results the enabler desired. He spoke of a world plunged into darkness, unlike what my plane had ever witnessed. He spoke of great evil lurking in plain sight. I asked him, begged him, what can I do? What can I do? But before I could get an answer, he faded away once more, returning to his world. And then I awoke. Signed M.H. My initials as well. Here we see Max Heindel meeting the elder brother once again in the otherworldly temple, within his inner world. Firstly, we can see that in the Chaos storyline, this is all very real. We can say that because the elder brother is informing Heindel about the events in the real world Rosicrucian organization, with the High Priest and his other acolytes, and what they plan to do. At first, you might speculate that the elder brother is the High Priest, but clearly from this letter, this isn't the case. Moreover, the elder brother is extremely worried about what the High Priest is trying to do, saying that forcing human evolution is never a positive thing. But if we really think about this for a second, it starts to get insane. So, Max Heindel is being spoken to by an entity who is a member of a secret order from another plane. People from our world can meet them at a physical location, the temple, but this place is on the boundary between this world and another, and very specific things need to be done in order to access it there. This is literally like early concepts for stuff that we would later see in the Dark Aether storyline. The temple is just like a liminal space, or other such places places that are part way between our world and the Dark Aether. And I guess could even be seen similar to how the Shadow Man influenced the pocket dimensions of Shadows of Evil and Alcatraz, and even communicated with humans in their realm, and even communicated with the humans of Dimension 63 in a similar fashion. This to me would suggest the Chaos and Dark Aether storylines were always meant to intercept, and this is not just a decision that they came up with for nostalgia purposes in Black Ops 6 Zombies. Whilst I don't think they've done a good job of intercepting them, I do think if Chaos was received differently, it would have concluded, and we would have been left on a cliffhanger that when Eddie and Sam walk through into the new universe, we would have found out that it's indeed the Chaos universe. Jason was throwing us on a whim by saying they are not connected, because technically the Aether and Chaos stories were not connected, but rather the Dark Aether story, that yes is a continuation of the Aether story, but is technically a self-contained thing at the same time. All of this evidence does seem to be early Dark Aether concepts. It is undeniable. The language used is so similar to many of the pieces of intel we have today, such as the entity who's speaking to Panos. Clearly, the Elder Brother is some sort of entity from the Dark Aether, and the real Rosicrucians were too. They are all individuals who clearly have a fondness for humanity and want to see them rise to greater heights. But seeing how the High Priest wants to force this change, the Elder Brothers have become incredibly worried about the fate of humankind, and seem to be equally unable to do anything. And these Dark Aether entities are often referred to as Elder Gods. We are literally seeing the beginnings here. What's even more mind-blowing is this ties into the Rhodes file we saw in the outro of the tomb, where Alistair Rhodes speculates that all of the Sentinel artifacts coming from totally different cultures indicates a common influence from a dark dimension, suggesting that the Sentinel artifacts originated from the Dark Aether realm and thus were granted to humanity from Dark Aether creatures themselves. The same is true here with the real Rosicrucians. They are from outside our world, another plane, another dimension, the place below creation. But what about the temple I mentioned, which, like I said, seems to be an early concept of the liminal spaces, and now with the concept of liminal spaces and charging these Sentinel artifacts with prima materia via the memories of people who have long since died but are trapped basically on time loops, well, this sounds extremely similar to the pockets in time, frozen in time, of the Sentinel trials. Well, that's because it does seem like they seem very similar. But what was this temple? This is the biggest reveal that these new Easter eggs have given us. There was another cipher that was translated by Richkiller that I purposely left until the end. This one is actually in the background of the Ancient Evil ending, and so was missed by a great many people. This one, though vague, has an incredibly interesting implication. The path lies ahead. Only the worthy will survive. Isn't this incredibly similar to Only the Cursed Survive? We first heard this statement in the pre-marketing for Shadows of Evil, and it would keep cropping up throughout Black Ops 3 and 4. Only the Cursed Survive is sort of a statement of fact. It's saying this is how, in the Aether storyline, everything will be. It's like a rule of the cycle, and of course parallels a lot with regards to the cursed characters of Shadows of Evil marked by the Beast. However, as we've discussed before on the channel and is now established fact, and like I said before, the Chaos storyline is the new post-Hagda Toten universe. But I really do think this was always planned. And this is a big through line connecting that marketing and the Chaos storyline. This new phrase even has an additional word in it. Only the worthy will survive. I really think the only reason Blundell said they are not connected is he wanted to shut down the theories because he thought we would guess the plot twist, which I think was a massive mistake for Blundell to do, and it's probably partly why people really struggled to get on board with the Chaos storyline when they knew it wasn't connected. Well, it turns out it would end up being. In the Aether storyline, the Cursed survive because they always have, but that rule was finally broken with the sacrifice of the original characters. They were cursed and could have survived forever, but they chose to die, or at least Primus Nikolai and Ultimus Richtofen had autonomy in that, breaking the rule. As such, there is a new rule in this universe, and the event that the worthy will survive has yet to happen. Throughout the Chaos story, up to Ancient Evil, people were constantly speculating about the fourth map. Now, we can't know for sure whether or not we would have gotten another map after that, as large amounts of evidence we've collated over the years seems to suggest that Aether was going to be a season all on its own and we were going to get a second season pass. It does seem like most likely from the leaks and rumours we've heard there were at least going to be 2 more Chaos maps in Black Ops 4. Maps like Transit, Buried potentially got cut from the Aether storyline along with a couple Chaos maps, Alpha Omega and Tag Toten released earlier instead of part of this second season pass. And you know, if you think about it, if the Aether the maps were planned to be a part of the second season pass, Trek might have wanted to get the full Chaos storyline out of the way first, and then conclude the Aether storyline, but then leaves on a plot twist that the story we played before was actually the new universe the entire time. That would have been crazy, but I think it was just too much of a risk for Trek to do, especially when they were shutting down speculation, and unfortunately it just didn't pay off. Then they got rushed to work on Cold War Zombies, of course, and all of that content ended up getting scrapped, and it really is a shame. But even with that being said, the map following Ancient Evil had to be huge narratively, as Ancient Evil was such a colossal cliffhanger. Many people have speculated, and even I, many times in the past, that the next map following Ancient Evil was the Library of Alexandria. After all, Medusa does say the library in the ending cutscene.
I will open the library.
But is that really a fair guess? Other than the use of the word library, there's not really anything to hint towards the story heading to Alexandria, aside from the glimpses shown in her flashbacks, and it would be weird to have a second map set in Egypt. So personally, I'm leaning against that idea. But if we weren't going to see the Library of Alexandria, we do have a lot of hints towards something, and arguably a much better map though. In basically every Chaos map, there are heavy hints towards Poseidon, Greek god of the sea, as we see it spelled out with the alchemical symbols in the portal of the 9 ending cutscene that the priest opens up and clearly he wanted to go towards. We see it on the gateway in Ancient Evil, but here's where it gets crazy. Rich Killer, thanks to brute forcing the hashes of the texture names, has pointed out that there are numerous depictions of Poseidon in Ancient Evil itself. Indeed, Poseidon is the person responsible for turning Medusa into a vicious gorgon. In the myths, Poseidon horrifically SAs Medusa, which is common in most Greek myths. Horrible stuff happens throughout them, with her being turned into a gorgon as a result of this being in violation of the sacred temple of Athena, where she was at the time. In fact, Rich Killer points out that the statues we see in the area of the central artifact in Ancient Evil are literally Athena looking on in disgust, Medusa having been beheaded and holding the artifact, and finally, Poseidon making a vile advance towards the woman. To a modern reader, this is horrendous, as Medusa is very clearly a victim, and yet is punished. This seems to be a theme that carries through in much of Medusa's dialogue in Ancient Evil. Treyarch subtly changed some of the mythology too, where in the myths, Medusa is beheaded by Perseus and her sisters are left alive. In Ancient Evil, she tells us that Perseus beheaded her sisters instead. It is incredibly interesting, therefore, that the statue of Medusa is without its head. Regardless, Medusa would rightfully want revenge on Poseidon, and that is likely what she would do, and with the knowledge she stole from Scarlet. If you had to pick one place in mythology that's most associated with Poseidon, it would undoubtedly be Atlantis, the city he founded and was ruled by him and his descendants. The Lost City, the Missing City. We already have tangible leaks for an Atlantis map dating all the way back to Black Ops 4's DLC season. One area, a so-called Earththrone room containing a waterfall. This in isolation isn't really much, but considering the looming force of Poseidon in the storyline, it seems incredibly likely that Atlantis was the true next or final map. It could have been DLC 3 or DLC 4, we won't really know, but Medusa had a mission for revenge, so it does make sense for her to go to Atlantis directly after, to get after the one who hurt her. Let's go back to the phrase, only the worthy will survive. Atlantis, in myth, was sunk deep beneath the sea as its inhabitants grew corrupt and sinful. The gods, seeing this, decided to destroy the city as a punishment. They were destroyed because they were unworthy. This message, then, is totally consistent with what the Order wants, even if their means are destructive. They want to guide humanity towards a future somewhat like the glory of Atlantis, but ensure that humankind never again falls to depravity. What is never mentioned in the mythology, however, is what happened to Poseidon in relation to this event. How did he feel about his city being destroyed? Perhaps he is sort of a missing god in the Chaos storyline. After all, if they are all Dark Aether entities, this would mean a god similar in power to Cortifex himself decided to raise his own city on the Earth, the greatest of any and all others. But the other beings from the Dark Aether were so offended by the moral decay of the place that they totally destroyed it. Perhaps Atlantis wasn't so much as sunk into the sea, but sunk into the Dark Aether, into the veil between realms. And the thing is, like I said before, Atlantis has been a map that we have been asking for literally since World at War. It's been speculated about since it was hinted at on Der Riese, and Treyarch trolled us with this idea of Atlantis for a very long time, moving forward with Shadows of Evil, which has the only the curse survive quote itself. Many people thought it was thematically meant to be a kind of Atlantis-like map. There's references to the missing city on the map, there's posters that seem to be an Atlantis-like place, and it's kind of like a map underwater, in this Lovecraftian-like space, where you've got a giant squid in the sky, you've got all these tentacle beings, and Treyarch might have finally wanted to do a true Atlantis map. And whilst originally we would have thought it had nothing to do with the Aether story, it would have turned out to be the new universe. How insane is this? The fact we are seeing these Dark Aether gods now recontextualized through the Chaos story lens, it does seem like this was always the plan. In fact, unclassified, there was a lot of speculation that it was hinting at an Atlantis map, because in the main Pentagon room, there is the monitor that displays a marking pointing to the middle of the ocean, which caused people to think, surely this is hinting at Atlantis. Of course, there's many debate on where Atlantis actually is, and this isn't the exact spot, but that's irrelevant. But if this was indeed hinting at Atlantis, and we were supposed to see an Atlantis zombies map in the future of the Chaos storyline had it not been cut short, then surely this re-validates my opinion once again that the Chaos and Aether / Dark Aether stories were always going to intercept in this fashion. This was always the intention, it just happened unfortunately in a much worse way than they initially envisioned due to developmental issues. But with Black Ops 7 appearing to be set within the heart of the Dark Aether itself, there has never been a better time for Treyarch to look back on these amazing concepts from Black Ops 4 and start trying to re-implement them properly. Different to how they've been doing in Black Ops 6, not simply name-dropping a character like Alistair Rhodes for fan service or having the Sentinel artifact be the key fetch quest throughout the entire storyline, but we end up not really doing much with it for the entire time, and really it could be any old artifact unconnected to the Chaos storyline. Instead of key jingling, actually taking a moment to look at just how detailed these concepts in Chaos were, as well as how heavily they interlinked with the real world, and attempt to put some of that narrative magic into the new storyline that, at the moment, really seems to just be ticking boxes, for mainly their own pleasure, since it's a very niche storyline. Of course, I like it, but I don't think the wider community seems to be on board, and of course the developers there since Black Ops 4 are fans of it, they really like this stuff, but it's not hitting the nail for a wider community. If there is one positive thing that's come out of all of this though, it's the true realization of how amazing the Chaos storyline, and more importantly, Jason Blundell and Craig Houston's vision for what zombies could have been, truly was in Black Ops 4, and it's a shame that in many people's eyes, it was the beginning of that tower kind of crumbling. But there's still time. These things can be reintegrated like they've done in Black Ops 6, but in a better way. And maybe we can finally get to the bottom of the origins of the Order and the connections to the Dark Aether gods. Maybe we could even see some of them in Black Ops 7 Zombies. Maybe even some of them could be the Shadowsmiths. I'd like to see how this all plays down and how it even connects to the original characters returning. And most importantly, I want to see concrete information from Treyarch as to what the next two Chaos storyline maps were. And I would love to even see them follow it up in a game in the future. Maybe after Black Ops 7, we can finally get these maps, because who wouldn't? Because who would say no to an Atlantis map? Literally the most innovative and ambitious idea ever for a zombies map. The fact we have never seen it yet is asinine. But anyways, thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe if you're not already for latest and great Call of Duty news information. So anyways, thank you for watching, and bye.